That's pretty hilarious. So I was talking about luck, and the camera went dead, and the whole system went dead. And there I was, pressing Control Alt Delete and doing everything I could, like, oh, it worked. Um, but you know, technical difficulties not new on this channel. So as I tried to sit here, because also for the last segment, I was speaking like this, and my head wasn't in the frame whatsoever. I was speaking about how I just watched Atlas Shrugged, and I just watched the sequels too, and how a lot of things that are going on in the movie happen to be going on like IRL, with the train derailments and gas prices like increasing, but not to the extent that they increased in the movie, thankfully, because in the movie gas is $40 a gallon. Oh, I just saw the screen like slow down, do kind of a matrix there. So $40 a gallon gas in the movie Atlas Shrugged, not in real life. Computer, don't freak out. um, Anywhom, I was just saying that it was super nostalgic and awesome for me because I've known uh, so many people in my life that movie has reminded me of, and it's always been like a transitory thing, like where I've known them for a while and then we're kind of out of each other's lives again. And I mean that about many people. I've known like women that were really successful in business that didn't really get like much notoriety, but like showed me portfolios of things they had done. And I'm just, it was just really interesting to step into that world. And I imagine that's what it's like in some of the big industries today. Maybe even like some of the tech places, or I don't know if it's the tech, but there's sometimes when you just meet people that are super industrious, and they just have such energy that actually like gives you energy to be around them. And that was the way, like with different I knew like a lot of inventors and people in Colorado. I have no idea where they are now or what they're doing now, but I'm just saying that back then it reminded me a lot of the 20th century engines, that whole situation in the Atlas Shrugged movies, where people were just inventing um, different engines, different ways of doing things, different like architectural designs, different. The top of my head is all cut off, but that's okay. We'll get through it. The window is a little bright, but I don't have a curtain, so. um. Anyways, yes. To get back on topic, I was just saying in the previous clip, before it got cut off and went dead, that there's always like this balance between like the really industrious people, that some of them literally don't need sleep, or they only need like 3 or 4 hours sleep, and they're fully refreshed and they're back at it again. And like when I would be joined at the hip for like short periods of time with different people like that, I would just be like, oh my gosh, I need sleep. Like, how are you able to do this all the time? Um, like these kind of people would work absolutely all day, go home, and like then organize their entire house until like 4 in the morning, and then sleep a little bit, and then go back to work absolutely all day again, problem solving. Like they just live on a different level. Um, and when I saw that up close, it really changed my idea of like people that are like heads of industry, or like people that do this, because I thought they would be more kind of like the regular person, where they would work hard in the office or like at whatever job, whether it was engineering or whatever it was, and then they would relax and enjoy like all the money they're making from all this. But no, it's like people that end up building like a life where they could have a lot of relaxation and vacations and all this kind of stuff. A lot of them don't. A lot of them just live for the work. And even if they weren't employed, they would stay so busy on their own projects. Like, even if it was like, you can take the day off, you can take 2 days off. They're like, no, I'm constantly doing something, and I need to be doing something and doing something and doing something and doing something. And I'm like, I respect it. I can do it for, limited periods of time. I can't do it all the time. I'm not, they call them the sleepless elite. like people that need almost no sleep and they're fully recharged and ready to roll. I am definitely not one of those people. Um, I do love some problem solving, and it is super duper satisfying. I suppose that's one of the things that's addicting about that kind of work, is that it's super frustrating until you get to the solution, and then it's super super satisfying, especially if you come up with a solution for something you've been working on for, who knows, maybe weeks, maybe months, and you suddenly, something clicks and you figure it out. That's like the best feeling in the world. And I think, well, arguably, because there's many great feelings in the world, but I'm just going to say that it is a wonderful feeling, and I can understand why people would want to feel that again and again. um, or if they just have something in their soul, like how an artist might need to paint or a musician might need to make music. It's like, for some people, they have a kind of hemispheric sync where it's like an artistic flowing, but it's like machines they're making, or it's architecture, it's something to do with the railways, but it's still very very innovative. It might not be that at all, it might be computer coding, it might be whatever your field is. But I'm just saying that the state of artistic flow is not actually only for artists, and I've seen this IRL. And you're like, well, what's all this about? um, Really, it's just about seeing hope in situations that maybe appear to be on a downturn. I feel like it's really easy to feel kind of down, especially with how much gas is costing, food is costing, rent is costing, everything is costing. Uh, it can be depressing, but it's often out of those times that great new things arise, and hopefully, I mean, I've been hearing rumors going on about fusion energy. I've been hearing rumors going on about this, that, and the other. And it's like, I know we've been hearing that for a long time, but I mean, I'm hearing that there's breakthroughs going on, and I'm like, wouldn't that be awesome? Wouldn't that be awesome if the freaking oh, that's right, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention it to you. In the Atlas Shrugged movies, this guy is like, I'm going to stop the engine of the world. And in one way you could say, oh, he's just recruiting all of the, the brightest people to come and live in his place away from the world. They call it Atlantis, but I don't think it's like a lost continent. I'm not really sure where it is. They have like a cloaking technology to keep people out. It appears to be a fake holographic sky with little hexagons all over it. Mm-hmm. But anyways, the other way you could take it is the engine he was working on for this 20th century company, which I wonder is like maybe a reference to Tesla or something there. Um, but anyways, uh, it's a particle accelerator, so it's like a CERN gate thing, except it's not built in a loop. Um, it was interesting that it was like, are you saying that too much particle acceleration can stop the world? Or are you saying that like taking the industrious people out and leaving like the more bureaucratic or more management level people is, it's like there's two ways you could take that, and it's probably explained in the books, but I haven't read the books. I've only just seen the movies, and I just saw them by accident. I had no idea it had anything to do with anything. Um, it just came on, and I was like, whoa, that's happening in the news right now. That's happening in the news. Like, oh, the train derailments and all this kind of stuff. I gotta keep watching. And then it like pulled me into the story. Um, and I kind of feel like I gave a bunch away, but these movies have been out since about 2013, so I'm presuming everyone else has kind of seen them, just I didn't somehow. Well, actually, I wasn't really watching many movies at that point. I was busy. I was on another tangent, another. But anywho, yeah. So I've had a lot of introspection and just going hermit mode from any kind of like online stuff, and really from a lot of IRL stuff too. But hopefully I've come back with more perspective, and I feel like it's really important for growth sometimes to shut the mouth and open the ears, like for an extended period of time, and reassess everything and question, wait a minute, why do I think that? Why do I presume that? Why do I assume that? Why do I take that for granted? Why is it that I feel this way about this, that, or the other? Because these are all kind of lenses that can color why you come to the conclusions that you come to. And I know it seems really abstract, but it's like maybe something happened, when you were a kid that made you feel a certain way about who even knows what, and somehow that's like something that you've forgotten about, but then when you see it again, it's like you have like a memory, like an emotion memory. And I think that's something that we don't talk about much, is like the mind can be played with, your memories, um, you have, but I'm like your mind can fall prey to different influences, but usually your heart, there's no way to erase those memories or to kind of gaslight you and reconvince you of something else. Whereas I feel like with the mind, we're always dealing with like the gamification of life, which short circuits your ability to think through things in the correct loop, which is empathy and cognition. When you gamify things, like you turn things into what seems like a game, whether that's like anything, whether it's like dating or whether it's violent computer games, like you're cutting out the empathy because you're like, oh, it's just a computer game, whatever. Um, but it's short circuiting that circuit, that loop you need to make, and it's going only to the mind, because when you see a puzzle, the mind is a problem solving engine, and you go, oh, I'm just gonna fix it like this. And I mean, they make movies like Free Guy. It's that's not the only one. There's a few movies where they say like, hey, you shouldn't be terrible to like AI characters because you don't know if they have cognition or not. And it's like, even if you don't believe at all that they have any sentience whatsoever, even if you're like, oh no, there's no way, still, if you use that space to just unleash, um, you know, the worst or baser parts of self, it still reflects back on you, and it will still affect your spiritual journey. It'll still affect your soul, even if you think like, oh no, it's fine. There's no detachment. Everything that you do energetically is kind of attached to each other, but it's just it operates from different levels of you. So what might be correct when in your mind when you are breaking something down might not match up with what your body's telling you. What your physicality energy is telling you might be something totally different. And it doesn't mean that one is right over the other, but it just means that you need to figure out what the correct levels um, of light and dark, of balance is for you personally. And basically to know that kind of anything we put out there, we kind of start seeing it in our world. And it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It might just be something peripherally, but it is there. So it's kind of it's important to monitor, like, whoa, am I being like super negative, or whoa, am I watching like a lot of like deranged horror movies? Like, is that I for some reason I go into like an emotional sorry, the whistling tooth. I go into an emotional funk, like a down space when I watch too much Criminal Minds. And that's not even anywhere near like the darkest, craziest thing that's out there, because some of the movies that are out now are nuts. Like, they would have been banned back in the day. It froze again, so I was just saying back in the day, uh, some of these movies would have been banned, but Criminal Minds is like a daytime TV show about like solving murder mystery kind of things. But if I watch too much of that, I go into like a weird place where I just feel really negative. So that's what I'm saying, is like it's different person to person. And so yeah, instead of saying a whole bunch, especially with this being a super emotional roller coaster year. where there was a lot of like downer stuff going on, I was like, you know what, instead of mouth open, it needs to be mouth shut for a little while. It needs to be ears open. Because I function really well in an introverted space, and this is obviously not an introverted space because I'm like the energy's going outwards, like I'm speaking. Whether it's useful or not, I hope it is. A lot of it is just kind of rambling and kind of maybe tying ideas together or food for thought or this or that. Uh, but again, it just shows me how there's so many things in life that are just a balance, or at least life as it's presented to us. It seems to be there's always this or that just about coming in and out of balance. But that's also the show, like that's also the stage, the distraction that is life, that life is theater, basically. And back on that note, do you remember the old 3D glasses? Like the old cardboard ones that you might get at the cinema? Like, I suppose maybe in the 90s, kind of? Where one lens was blue and one lens is red. Oh, excuse me. I'm just like, oh, okay. Because I have been having definite, like, uh, I've always had the kind of blue flash, or not really flash, but like presence in the periphery, like on this side. And when I close my eyes, for sure, I see colder colors in this eye, and I see warmer colors in this eye. But now I'm starting to have like a red flash, or like presence, or like something or other going on in the periphery of this eye. So now I have the blue and the red. So I got my 3D glasses on. And it just makes me think how no matter how deep you dig into the mysteries, there's always a layer of like really bad jokes. Um, because I suppose we get super duper serious when we're trying to figure out what is life, what is consciousness, consciousness doubling around and looking back at itself and trying to figure out what's going on, is usually an enormous energy waster, because everything that you are seeing, everything that you are seeing, there's a layer of your consciousness, of your interpretation over it. So when you just look out and you don't even look back at yourself, you're still seeing yourself, because you're still seeing like, oh, I don't like that. Why? Well, there's a whole history of why I don't like that. And oh, I do like this. Why? Well, there's a whole history of why I do like this. Or I just have a gut feeling that I like to look at this, but I don't like to look at that. So you're painting a layer of yourself, a lens of you, your character, your ego, your wants and likes and dislikes and everything else over everything that you're seeing. So in that essence, that particular layer of reality is the mirror. So everywhere you look, you're projecting a mirror where you can see yourself, but you can also see through it, and you can see the things that you're projecting on. So in that, it's like you don't have to keep looking back at yourself, because then you end up in a spiral if you just keep especially if it's the mind consciousness trying to look back at itself, and try to figure itself out on a super deep level. You really need to do that with the heart. The heart is able to do it, but the mind kind of ends up not so clear on things when you make it kind of double and redouble. Like when you make it basically run an endless loop, it'll do it, but it's not going to be any clearer at the end than it was at the beginning. You might have some good takeaway. I guess I should never say never, and I shouldn't do this because that's apparently bad. But I do this for breathing exercises, though. I don't know why the fingers went up there, because I don't usually do that, but this, if you do this, it can actually open up, like I have a lot of issues with trying to breathe through my nose from days of being a swimmer and like bashing my nose off of the swimming pool floor, the freaking stairs at the swimming pool, all that kind of jazz. But I can literally feel it like open when I do this. Oh, there we go. And my lungs too, because I tend to be like a shallow breather. I don't tend to like have these long, relaxed breaths unless I'm like purposefully sitting down to meditate to do that. If I'm just dealing with everyday life and I'm like, I'm overwhelmed, what the hell's going on? Then the shallow breathing is for sure still an issue because your body reacts realistically to things. If you see like, oh my gosh, something is stressing me out, you start breathing faster, you get more oxygen in your bloodstream because your body's like, oh, obviously that's you're still a cave woman, and then it must be a saber-toothed tiger, and you must be ready to run. And it's like, well, in the modern world, your body reacts as if you're dealing with a saber-toothed tiger, but actually, it's just weird abstractions. A lot of people now have depression and anxiety because they're told, like, you can't be a human being, you have to sit down at a desk for the majority of the day, and you need to be a really, really poor word processor or a really inefficient computer. You need to sit there and type and type and type and type and do jobs that the computer will always be better at doing than you are. Because, I mean, I was just thinking about this the other day. I'm like, there's a reason why some people struggle so hard with that. It's because it's insane. And if you tried to make any other animal do that, it just wouldn't happen. Like if you tried to make like a dog or possibly a monkey, maybe a monkey could be trained to type, but still, if you told it you have to sit there day after day after day for all of your working life and type and be at the computer and type and focus on all these abstract things that don't exist. It exists in the mind space, but it doesn't exist in the body space. The body is like, I need food, I need shelter, I need water. Are we getting on with that or not? Like, why are you sitting here all day? Like, we need to be out foraging and doing things. What are you doing? And your mind is like, oh no, I'm imprisoned. I to earn the paper tokens to get the goods and services that are probably, whatever, to buy sugary treats that I shouldn't be eating, this kind of thing. I have to sit here and I have to do this unnatural stuff and be super still and disciplined all the time, especially when I'm a small child. And if I can't do it as a small child, then there's something wrong with me. And I'm just like, I'm so glad we didn't have any computers when I was in elementary school. Because that would have been torture. Like, it was torture enough listening to the long-winded going on and on about all the depressing history of Ireland and the potato famine and It wasn't what I wanted to do as a kid. I was like, can we, like, not do this depressing stuff today? Can we do something more interesting? Because we're going walya about the past, but we have no intention of doing anything about it in the present or the future. So, I mean, you're telling me all this so that I can be afraid of potato famines in the future, but in the meantime, everyone was whispering about the beginnings of, the trade agreements and the globalism. And it's like, with the trade agreements and the globalism, we can get potatoes from other countries, and we don't need to talk about this anymore. It's done. And people, don't like that because they want to stay attached to the past because it gives you a very firm, solid foundation, which, a lot of us don't have emotionally. You don't have that grounding under you, so you attach to things that are very solid concepts, especially if you measure your reality in terms of trauma and sadness and suffering. Like, you can really ground yourself by just going all in on something that is massively depressing or a huge struggle, but it's bad for your soul. That's the be all end all there. Is like, yeah, feel free to do it, but if you do it forever, don't be mad at yourself if you can't thrive. If all you feed yourself is sadness, then what are you supposed to do? I mean, of course you can and should have empathy for everyone that went through terrible things, but don't live in the past, because then you are not able to see anything that in the present might bring you peace, because your peace is important. That was kind of, I suppose, again, getting back into the Atlas Shrugged series of movies, it was kind of drilling the point home that if your life is completely about having to sacrifice emotionally and every other way for the next man, for the other person, for the person that lived in the past, for the abstract person that doesn't even exist, the hypothetical person, that robs you of your own peace. Because nobody can give everything. If you give everything all the time, eventually you will resent it. Because even if you don't need for yourself, eventually you might want to like start a family or something. And then when you have to, provide for a dependent, whether, whatever type of dependent that would be, whether it's like a dog or a child or whatever it is, that's when you start to notice all the takers. It's like if you're just freely giving and you're so, so, so nice, people just show up and take and take and take. And you can't imagine that they would take when they don't need to take because you're so good and so nice. But there's many people who have abundance and they just want to take more anyway. Like, when I was at Dana Point in California, I used to see people that had like incredibly expensive cars, like $250,000 cars, pulling up to the social welfare office, like taking welfare checks. And they live in multi-million-dollar homes in Dana Point and have these huge cars and have all the money in the world. And they're like, no, I don't want to pay for my groceries. I don't want to pay, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for that. And it's like, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to pay for this or that, and there's like a social agreement where we're like, we're not going to means test. It's just if you need assistance, we'll give it to you. That's fine. But when people like that, who have an enormous wealth themselves and then have other means of income, whether it's, welfare or not, if they have multiple streams of income and they're still coming to you asking for things, asking for favors, asking for money, asking, it's like, you're just, at that point, you just got to be labeled a taker. It's like, what are you giving? I don't want to hear like what your husband has given and what your husband has invented and what they, or your wife or whoever the partner is. Are you giving as much as you're receiving, or are you just like in such a state of worrying that you won't have enough that it's almost become like an eating disorder, except that you're not eating, you're not binging, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have money. I need to take. And it's like that level of disorder, even though it probably won't kill you anywhere near as fast because it's not eating, it's the same maladjustment. There's still something in there where you're worried that you won't have enough for whatever reason. And I'm just saying, while that's going on, it's very difficult to have any kind of inner peace. It just is. It's like the abstractions, the trying to be cyborgs and computers and all this kind of stuff that we're dealing with in the present and the future, that's the last stuff to sort through if you're looking for peace. If you're really looking for peace, I think, in my opinion, you need to go right back to basics, and you need to make sure that you have like a balanced and well-adjusted sense of self in the body, and then in the emotions, and then in the mind, and then in the abstractions and all the other things that are fruits of the mind. But if you leave the more baser layers, not baser, but like the body, emotional, and if you leave those layers of yourself to just rot and you just live in abstraction and complexness, that part of yourself is going to cry out for help. And it's going to send emotion, it's going to send anxiety. You're going to go, oh, I don't know where all this anxiety came from. You're not listening to yourself, you're listening to the world, and yourself is like screeching, like, please help me, like, you're eating things I'm allergic to and you don't even feel it because you're so disconnected from the body. You're making yourself really unhappy, but you're so disconnected from your emotions that you don't feel it. The body is like trying to shake you and trying to wake you, but there's only so many things it can do. And if you don't listen, eventually it sends you illness. Eventually it goes, well, I can't do this anymore with no support. Like, you are all of you, but the part of you that's the mind has to work with the rest before you work with the outside world. Because if you just give, the outside world is the biggest taker of all. It'll take, take, take. Whereas if you give to yourself first, or if you, in an emotional sense, take that, the rich people say, take 10% of your paycheck and pay yourself first, put that into your account, count it as a bill and make it so it's non-negotiable. If you do that with your emotions, where you're like, I need to give at least 10% to myself, make sure I'm okay here before I give to this world that's endlessly hungry, that's never satisfied because it only exists in a state of disorder, and it only exists on a teeter-totter because everything has to be a drama. Every decade, there's some almost world-ending thing, or it's almost a world war, it's almost this, almost that. That's never going to stop. Ever, ever, ever. Because they don't like peace, because peace is boring. It makes for boring TV, and, the earth is a stage, and we can't have boring TV. We have to have drama TV, or we have to have clown world TV. We have to have all of this stuff, even though we don't know if there's any audience outside of this realm that's watching. It's still kind of how this. I like that happened. Just as I was saying that, my tongue by itself went meh. I'm like, okay. I just saw it on the screen. I didn't even feel it happening, but I'm just like, is that confirmation that there's something meh? What, like getting entertainment out of this whole show? But anyways, what I'm trying to say is, if only we could tell people, make room to give a little bit to yourself first. And that's why I don't say give a lot, give it all, because the world demands its tribute. It demands your energy. It demands your time. It demands your years until you're out of years and out of health and out of time. And then it has no use for you and it casts you aside because you're not interesting anymore. Like, that's the cold hard truth there, is like, the world, not necessarily the people. Your people will love you no matter how old you are, I'm sure. But I'm just saying, like, the world and how useful you can be for industry, or for, loosh, or for whatever. The younger you are, the more interested the system is in you, because you can be convinced of anything when you're super young, and you have massive energetic output because you're super young. So that kind of wanes in most people, not all people, as you get older, because you're just, tired. You realize that there's no peace in the external world, and you start to shield yourself a little bit. You shield your energy a bit because you're like, oh, this isn't just a one-off. Like, this is going to go on forever and ever and ever. Like, there's no resolution to the game. It just goes in circles, and it just needs people to have massive emotional outbursts. And honestly, in the last 20 years, it doesn't seem like this game has required the game of life, or the spiritual aspect of it, or whatever. It doesn't seem to have required massive positive emotional output from us. Like, there's a lot of negative things. There's a lot of things going on that maybe they don't even pan out to be as crazy. But it's put forward as like, oh, whatever this is or that is, it'll be a huge disaster, it'll be this or that, to get you, like, terrified and just like, oh no. That seems to be going on and on and on. It seems to be kind of now, though, that the story is like, oh, it's aliens, there's spaceships, we're shooting down spaceships over Michigan, this kind of stuff. People aren't really going, oh, people are too busy going, oh my gosh, I need to just, like, pay for basic things and survive, and it's so much harder than it used to be that I don't even care about aliens. So that script is going to switch really quickly because it's not getting a reaction. I feel like even if you pulled out all kinds of aliens from somewhere, say it was like a TV show and you could just pull out all kinds of aliens and put them on TV, I think a lot of people wouldn't even tune in. They're just like, are you here to help? Are you going to pay the bills? No? Okay. I'm busy. I'm overwhelmed. I'm beyond my capacity of what I can do. So, like, nice to see you, but, I don't have time. That's how a lot of people are feeling. They're like, irrelevant. Maybe in the 80s, maybe in the 90s, it would have worked. You could have pulled it out, people would have gone, oh, so shocking, oh my gosh, it's like Star Trek, oh, let's have world peace because, now there's alien presence. And it's like, no, if there really are aliens out there, and I have no idea if there are or not, by deciding to wait until people were so desperate and so pressured and just so jaded and pissed with this whole thing, the constant irritation game, people have now, like I said, shielded your energy. The constant irritation, what does that do? Constant irritation makes pearls. Like that's the process of how you make a pearl. Like you will harden around yourself. So you'll harden to the point that like people back then would have been like, oh wow, alien leaders, to the point now where it's like, do you have something that can immediately address my concerns, or are you wasting my time because I'm almost dead out here? Like, I just do not care. I don't have the leeway to have some big emotional woo. And you might think like, oh, that sounds crazy. No, people would totally react. But I'm like, people would not react now the way that they would have back then. Because for whatever reason, right now is just way more irritating. And even though people worked extremely hard back then, it just seemed like there was always a sunny day, or there was always it just seemed easier to breathe. It just seemed that everything was going to be fine. It seemed like, oh yeah, and this will go on forever and everything's going to be fine. Whereas now, it's like, oh, are we teetering on a cliff, and do we even care? Like, it's that bleak. The poor people that have been born into this that don't even remember the decades before, like, I can't even imagine what their emotional grounding is like. I mean, the people that are aware, the other side of the coin is just don't have awareness of all of this and just live your life, and until it becomes so annoying that it's literally knocking at your door and telling you that it's interfering with your everyday life. Unless it's that extreme, you really can just say, you know what, I don't see you, I don't care, and that's probably the only way to live as a normal person if you're born into this time and you don't have any other times to like reflect back on and think about. So this was a huge, crazy ramble that just went all kinds of everywhere. But that's my honest feelings, and I feel the same too. I'm like, if there was some paradigm shifting thing about, other civilizations, I would have been interested back in the day, but now I don't care because I've had so much go on that it's like, oh, really? You've been having a wonderful heavenly time and you've been watching and not doing anything, and you've let all these things happen? Oh, well, that's very benevolent, I guess, of you. Oh, you couldn't interfere because first contact or some other thing. Oh, okay. Well, I don't have time, so bye. Like, it's like you either have amazing technology where you could have helped and you didn't, or you didn't have amazing technology and therefore you're in need and you need us to do something for you and we're already overdrawn. If it's something like that where you're like, I need your minerals or I need this or that, I'm sure the EU will sign over whatever it is spaceship man needs, and then maybe he'll just go back wherever he came from, and then we can move on to the next news story and the next news cycle and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And instead of being caught in that wave of just being flipped upside down, if you've ever been surfing where you just get completely turned in the wave like that, instead of doing that, it seems to be that more focus on equilibrium is needed than ever. And yeah, I'm sure you guys already knew that, but it just felt good to say it out loud. So that's enough talking, and I will chat to you soon.